Our next speaker knows firsthand how powerful a few well chosen words can be. Emily Hagedorn leads Yelp's online community ambassador team, where she supports top Yelp elites in welcoming and engaging contributors across the platform's biggest markets. Before that, she spent nearly a decade as Yelp's community manager in Louisville, planning hundreds of events and running PR, marketing, and social media for the region. A former journalist with a passion for storytelling, Emily believes that the right words can spark connection and inspire relationships that last. In this session, she will share how to make every message count, whether it's a quick note, a welcome post, or even an AI assisted draft, and how to write with clarity, empathy, and impact. Please join me in welcoming Emily Hagedorn.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been to CMX Connect. I've tuned into so many different CMX things, so it really is just such a great opportunity to actually be able to be on the stage myself and get to talk about something that I am personally very passionate about. So thank you to Beth and everybody for helping put this amazing global event together. To get into it, so during kind of my talk, I'm going to explore a bit how to make your community messaging truly impactful by building real connections, standing out kind of a bit amid all the noise, and even using AI, yes, even AI, to thoughtfully kind of find your unique voice so you can do the best you can and kind of connect with people. So a little bit about me, as Beth said, quick intro, 12 years with Yelp, former Louisville community manager where I still live. Now I lead our team of amazing online community managers. Yelp is all about connecting people with great local businesses, and our Yelp Elite Squad is really like our community. That's really at the heart of kind of what Yelp does. And so SEM, hosted events, marketing, all that fun stuff, transitioned over to the OCA side of things. Our team is one of the newest on the community side and has been consistently growing because it is having really great success. Our OCAs are Yelp elites and are often the first point of contact for new users on the site. And so the role really is to kind of educate, welcome users, help them kind of get the most out of Yelp, introduce the Yelp Elite Squad to them in the larger community. And so hopefully they go from just, curious new users to confident, excited Yelp elites. Also a wife and a mom. And then before Yelp, as Beth said, I was a reporter, a journalist. Writing has always been a passion of mine. And I've really seen kind of firsthand the power that effective, clear communication can have. My background in journalism has just taught me how to be curious, how to absorb kind of everything that's going on around me, and to help others make sense of it all. And so, I'm excited that I get to kind of bring those skills over with me to Yelp and, still use them to this day, 12 years after I actually left the journalism field. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the obstacles that we face when it comes to getting our messages to hit their mark. There is just so much noise out there. Looking into like different research, we get hit with anywhere from like 4,000 to 10,000 ads a day. We notice maybe 100, but honestly, being asked like, can you think of one off the top of your head, which I'm actually going to talk about in a sec, might be a little bit hard because there's just so much. There's AI slop. We're constantly in the back of our head asking, is this real? Having to do that on a loop, promo overload, just overflowing inboxes and texts and algorithms deciding what we're going to see. So then also not only are we having to filter what we're seeing, but then, having to second guess why we're seeing what we're seeing and actually what that says about us. And then you just have like the news cycles and life and everything else is just, gestures to everything. It's just exhausting to turn out all that noise. So the question is, how do we break through with that? So like I said, a quick question. Let me open up the chat. I'd love for you, just quick activity, take a couple seconds, describe a message that did stand out to you, whether it was an advertisement, just a message you got, a text, a message from a community that you're a part of. I'm always fascinated when community managers are part of other communities that they don't actually manage and what made you want to be a part of that community. So think about like what actually motivated you to join a community or donate or click or make a purchase. Oh, that's a great sound pick. Thank you. Yeah. And so hopefully kind of think back through some of those things that actually made an impact. And, as we kind of go through this presentation, we'll kind of take a closer look at maybe why those things hit their mark. And you can kind of take some of those ideas as you go forward. So building connection. So at Yelp, we have two main ways of engaging users on our site and our app. First are compliments, which are kind of brief 1,000 character max messages that let you show appreciation for another user's reviews or photos. Think of them like texts. So they're very short, very to the point, and that's how our OCAs and CAs typically start their conversations with users. And we also have direct messages, which allow for, as you can imagine, longer communication. But in both cases, we only have a very limited scope to grab somebody's attention. We just have words on a screen. And we have to make every message count. So we've had to really get intentional with our messaging. Every message that we send is a chance to connect. And so to begin with, we always try to start and think about, like, what is the feeling? What is the action? What do you want a user to feel when they read this? And what action do you want them to take? Hopefully it's just one action. So you're specific. And so, having this in the back of your head, it might seem pretty simple, but once you think through it, it can help you kind of streamline a lot of your messages. We also unveiled this year our Make It Personal, Actionable, and Authentic framework. So our OCAs kind of have a list under each of these, specific to what they do with things that they have to do with each message, and things that are just highly recommended that they can kind of check off as they do. And usually this is, we use this a lot with our intro compliments, which are the first time kind of reaching out to somebody on the site. And so with, first time intros, big thing that's under this framework is to be personable, or to personalize whenever we can. To move the needle, our team has to balance quality and quantity. We have to reach out to a large number of people, but we also need to do that in a high quality way. If you're kind of on either side of that, it doesn't work. And so we try to personalize where we can, but obviously we can't spend 5 minutes on each message because we wouldn't get enough across. And so we use text expanders. We talk a lot about, when you're looking at a profile page, what are the cues that you can pick up on quickly? That will also get somebody's eye. So then they know that you looked at their page, that this is an authentic message. We also, be open about who you are in your role. We never want anybody to feel like there's like a bait and switch of you thought you were talking to somebody you connected and actually they work for the site. And so from the beginning, we always like to be open about that. Document so you can build upon it later. So we have an internal network where we put notes. That's really important. And then always asking a question, giving a very direct call to action so they know what to do with that. I know when I was a CM, I was guilty of just doing these big info drops to my members, and wasn't surprising. It'd be crickets kind of after I sent it out. And so now kind of looking at this more, it's very clear. You need a question, you need a call to action. Tell them specifically what you want them to do to help with that. This year, I've also made it a priority to kind of put ourselves in the user's shoes. Because how we view the messages isn't necessarily how they always view the messages. For instance, we send out such a high volume of messages that we, usually do it in a computer with a keyboard because it's a lot easier to do it that way. But our users usually see them on the mobile app. So what seems like a short message on a computer screen is actually much longer on a phone. And if it's too lengthy, they won't read it all, which, doesn't help at all when it comes to connection. And so that's why choosing every word carefully is so important. Another thing to remember is our inboxes are packed because we reach out to so many people, our compliments on the upside, our DMs. But for many of our users, we are, especially at the beginning of their whole Yelp journey, we're the only ones that are reaching out to them. And so they'll only see our messages back to back, even if those messages were sent many months, even years apart. And so that's why it's essential that every communication feels like an ongoing conversation, even if they haven't replied yet. So also it's good to kind of just imagine like if you were saying this to them in person, not written out. So with that example, if you came up to somebody at a party, introduce yourself, and you see them again a few months later and you introduce yourself to them, that feels awkward, feels off-putting, feels icky. Which is definitely not what we want, how we want our users to feel. And so we want them to feel remembered and valued. So on here, this is an example from Zarifa, one of our OCAs, which the bottom example was sent last year. And then this user kind of didn't reply, but came up again writing. So she reached out again and just, signaling like reaching back out to you, it makes it seem like, that they were remembered, and keeps that keeps that conversation, picks it back up from where it left off. So you're not starting over. And then this user actually did reply. And so that's when Zarifa sent the message at the top saying, I sent you a DM with more information. Finally, we aim to also connect with users at their key moments. So like when they're actively writing reviews rather than weeks after the fact. So meeting them where they are really helps our messages resonate more and also just helps build a stronger sense of community. We also want to make it fun and easy for users to start a conversation with us. So if we get somebody to reply, our chances of turning them into a Yelp Elite go way up. So we focus on dropping conversational breadcrumbs. So this means sharing a little bit more about ourselves or highlighting something that we have in common. On the left here are some examples from Sarah and Quentin, who are some OCAs in the LA area. You can see the one at top. Sarah reached out to our Yelp Elites at the end of last year, and she put at the bottom one, she personalized it by highlighting what their first review was about, which was a fun take on this. And at the bottom, she included some fun facts, and she had a lot of people respond saying like, I'm from Chicago too, or, I love sushi too. And then bottom is one from Quentin that he just sent last week that also had some of those, personal touch points in there. And this just goes, it's a great way to kind of show that we are real people. We're not bots, and helps us stand out. So we look for opportunities to add these personal touches, even if it's in, more routine messages like thank you notes. And then when someone asks about being Yelp Elite, instead of answering the what, it's a good rule of thumb to answer the why. So the what is that elites are our most active and influential users. But the why is more compelling. It's about connecting with your city, building community, meeting like-minded people, supporting local businesses. And so that's what really helps spark these meaningful conversations. So we're working really hard to make these connections. We're being intentional. We're viewing things, that we send from the recipient's point of view. We're dropping those seeds for communication or for conversation. And now we really want to stand out. So hopefully your message is one of the 100 that really you can remember after the fact. And it comes down, the good thing is that a lot of this kind of comes down to those small details. It's not a big overhaul of communication, but it's just getting some small details correct. Most people that we reach out to already show some interest, and this goes for not just our community, but for lots of years as well. If they're in front of you to reach out to, they probably indicated that they have some interest. And so a lot of that work is already done for you. So now the job is then to kind of deliver your message in the clearest, most meaningful way possible. Focusing on how we kind of put those words together can make a bigger impact than you might think. So one big battle to kind of overcome, getting somebody to read all the information that you send. That's why I really like this slippery slide writing techniques. So the idea is that reading, whatever you're reading, it should feel like you're going down a slide, and before you know it, you've read it all and you're at the bottom of the slide. And this was developed by a copywriter, Joe Sugarman, in the 80s and 90s. But a lot of that still, even though it's decades old, a lot of it still works today. So some kind of just fast tips. You can read through a bunch of them on the slide, but, lead with a punchy, intriguing first sentence. Vary your sentence length, and then include regular line breaks. Nobody wants a giant block of text. Use bucket brigade phrases. So think of a bucket brigade as like taking the water down the line. These are words that kind of keep the eye going down the line. So phrases like, by the way, TLDR, or doing the thing that English teachers told us not to do, which is starting sentences with conjunctions like and, so, but. They keep people moving along. If you need to cover a few topics, you can form it as a list with bullets, or use, first and then second. If somebody says first and they start talking, you're naturally inclined to think, okay, well, what's second? And that pulls them further down. You can use emojis, special characters, with a not just using them, but using them to highlight key points and emphasizing and enhancing your tone. Since, if it's written word, it can be hard to sometimes infer the tone with it. And so emojis obviously can help with that. And then again, always ending with a clear next step. You want them to want to read until the end, and this can help with that. You can also use storytelling techniques in your writing. I really like Super Communicators is one of my favorite books this year, which my team has heard me mention before, but I really like this quote: stories bypass the brain's instinct to look for reasons to be suspicious. We get drawn to stories because they feel right. Not that we don't want people to ask questions, but again, given how noisy everything is, I'll take all the help I can get when it comes to kind of getting our messages across. So just pointing out a few of these, like even with a sentence, you can set the scene, you can use sensory details to make it feel alive, help your user feel like they're a character or they're part of whatever you're talking about. We get bombarded with, frankly, so much boring, dull writing from just emails, user agreements, legal things, like all day. And so making yours stand out by making it more fun and engaging can definitely help with that. And then we can go beyond just the perks and rewards with external motivators, focusing on more of the intrinsic motivations related to people's values and purpose and sense of belonging. When we revamped our Yelp Elite Squad page, you can see on the left here, we made sure to highlight some of what our community stands for, which is like authenticity, discovery, local love and appreciation. And through our elite communications, we also try to emphasize how their contributions truly support and help connect people with these businesses. And so by focusing on some of these deeper intrinsic values, we also hope that we're attracting elites for the right reasons, the ones who generally want to support businesses and be a part of our community. And so that also kind of helps our communities grow in a meaningful way. So lastly, just talked a lot about things to do. Here are a few things not to do. This is also kind of a good segue into the last part of my talk, which is going to be all about AI. So it can help to avoid obvious kind of AI tells in your writing, whether you're using AI or not. This list on the slide is not exhaustive. I'm just going to kind of go over a couple of these, and considering AI is just by nature of AI, always learning, it can help to kind of research these on, ongoing and just kind of seeing what's coming up. But, M dashes, I love M dashes. I actually used to have a blog called the M dash. This McSweeney's article is really funny and really kind of touched because, I use M dashes naturally a lot in my writing, but I've tried to cut these down, or at least only use them as they're originally grammatically intended, for emphatic breaks in sentences, for asides, for a sudden change of thought, not just as a colon and a comma. AI responses are typically in second or third person, and they don't change POVs. And so try to write a lot of my writing in first person or shift, which is how people typically talk. AI doesn't know details unless you tell it the details. So getting as specific as we can, especially when we're talking about our community, about events that we've done, events we're going to do soon so people don't miss out, all of those type of things, talking about connecting them with another community member can go a long way. Marketing speak, cliches, just cut them out as much as you can. The biggest thing that helps is obviously writing like a real human, warm, a little imperfect, conversational, and that can go a long way. Which, somewhat counterintuitive, is what I was saying. AI can actually help with that too. So it can hurt it, and then it can also help, when you're using it thoughtfully. So the key kind of takeaway for me when it comes to AI is to find and refine your voice. The key takeaway is just every piece of writing should start and end with human ideas. AI can help in the middle of the process, but it shouldn't be the beginning or the end. Hopefully that's not groundbreaking, but it's definitely bearing repeating, especially when it comes to writing. Trust your instincts. If something doesn't sound like you would say it, don't do it. Take a step back, keep revising. Reading your own writing aloud is a great way to catch anything that feels off. When I was in college, like one of my advisors, he always said, like, when you're writing something, if it sticks in your head, it causes pause even for a moment. There's a reason for that, even if you can't put your finger on it. And so go back and look at it again. And same with reading out loud. I know my family makes fun of me because they hear me reading out loud all the time, but it's just a good way of making sure that what you're saying is actually something that you would actually say. And then personally, I like to kind of keep as much of me in my writing as possible. So I prefer to use short AI prompts to break up, and break up whatever work I do with AI into smaller steps, and then use additional prompts on top of that, just so, I can review and adjust as I go. This isn't the most time-saving way to use AI. I know that, but again, my goal with this is not to save time. It's to help me put the best words out there to get somebody's attention. And so a simple way to get started is with a prompt like this one, revise for clarity and tone. If you're unsure about your community's tone, you can do some of these instructions. I know Beth is going to share these presentations after the fact, or take a screenshot. You can use something like this to kind of hone in on what actually your tone is. And then on the right in the pink is kind of, the top is just a dry, I started with kind of a dry description of what the Up Elite Squad is. And then using that prompt is, I got the one under that, which getting closer there. Again, it's not the end point. I would still edit it, but it does seem a little bit more exciting, more inviting, more engaging. And so it's a step in the right process. And then for a more advanced approach, you could create an AI persona to kind of continue to help you refine your messaging. I know several AI models, whatever one you're using, most of them have something like this that you could do with them. So earlier this year, I developed an OCA persona using what we use at Yelp, our AI model, defining kind of key elements like those listed here, purpose and tone, purpose and role, tone and voice. You can kind of go through these and ask your AI model for help, and it can kind of give you instructions on how you could create a persona. But at the bottom here is, I put that same text through the persona, and this is what it got. And so it had the knowledge base. You can add, we have our messaging playbook was uploaded into this persona, style guides, and so it knew that we, putting this through, that we'd want it to be specific. We want to include information on how to learn more about the Up Elite Squad. And so it just, again, it's still a work in progress. I would continue to tweak it, but it gets you further in the direction. It also helps things stay consistent between the messaging that you're sending out. And again, with this persona, I still prefer short, specific prompts, but will help you at the end of the day, come up with messaging that is what you'll need. Lastly, some short AI prompts that I use kind of my daily work, again, that helps with this. AI is great for helping me check my biases and see how a message might come across to a user. So these top two here, prompts here are especially for that. Other prompts can kind of boost a message's emotional impact, make the language stronger, more engaging, simply ensure that it sounds conversational. And then the bottom, sometimes, I'll just want to try something different. So like asking it how a Gen Z person or millennial or boomer might say something. I may not use most of that version, but it helps me kind of find new ways to get my point across, find new ways, to get in the head of maybe somebody else who isn't like me, and present the information in a way that'll mean something to them. And then if you're stuck, don't be afraid to get a little weird, pushing for the unexpected, which is the bottom prompt, has really given me some of my best ideas. It keeps things fresh and creative. And if nothing else, it'll just provide some levity and fun things in your day. So thank you. I hope this kind of has given you some ideas to try with your messaging. Thinking back the messaging you mentioned, you thought about maybe earlier, maybe you can see now why maybe that got through to you. But love for you to reach out to me and to answer any questions.
Thank you, Emily. That was fantastic. I know that was, we love when we get into the weeds and we have like tangible, actionable examples of how people are using things. So thank you very much. There are a handful of questions. We've got a few minutes. So I'm going to start with mine, as I always do. I'd love to hear if you have any phrases you always avoid because they come off cold or robotic, or words you're like, oh no, I don't use that word.
Mostly lately I've been noticing, and again, maybe it's an AI tell, but like words like vibe or inspo instead of inspiration, like sometimes it can kind of sound a little bit too cutesy. And so, keeping in mind of like what's coming up a lot when I'm using AI can help me with that, and kind of check myself a little bit. Using it, I know in conversation, you naturally would be asking questions to somebody like, do you get that? Understand? So those can help, but also again, they can kind of come off a little fake sometimes. And so try to check like rhetorical questions. Again, I think there should be some questions because that kind of people reading, but making sure that it's, that you're doing it with intent to be conversational and not to be, salesy in any way.
Okay, that's good advice. Jennifer wonders, what are your thoughts on using emojis in messaging?
I mean, they're kind of becoming just our language. But I do think, not just kind of putting them haphazardly, but really using them to emphasize things as you go along. And so whatever, like some of the main takeaways are using emojis around that, using them again to like show tone. And so like, if you're trying to be a little bit sarcastic or a little bit, friendly in your messaging, choose, emojis with care that kind of help show that. But yeah, I mean, I know some people can kind of get overwhelmed with emojis, but I think they can work well.
And when they're used correctly. Because you're right. I think it's like if you're wanting to be a little sarcastic, or you're like, I feel like you can even use emojis to like protect yourself a little bit because you're like, I need to say this, I need to get this off my chest, but like, I'm going to use the upside down face emoji afterwards. But like, protect myself because I don't want to be hurting anyone's feelings or whatever.
Right. I like the like winky tongue out emoji. I feel like I use that one a lot for like, I'm trying to be silly. Like, please don't take me 100% serious. This is silly. And so, yeah, no, I think it's going to get to the point where it's just like using our normal alphabet where we're just so attuned to using them.
Totally. Well, but the problem with that is that you mentioned like, how would a boomer say this? How would a millennial say this? I feel like each generation uses emojis different. And I had a whole crisis at one point when it was like, oh, don't use the laughing emoji to show you're laughing. Instead, we're using the skull emoji to show that we died laughing. And I was like, what? Whole crisis.
You have to own it too. Like, I am not Gen Z. And, I'm a millennial-ish, Xennial, but like, I always think of what is the meme, like the Steve Buscemi meme that's like, hello, fellow kids, like coming in. Like, I try to check myself too of like, I'll put it, when we talk to like on our team of putting messaging out there that they can use. I also realize and this is, authenticity is a big value. And so I really champion the team of like, say this how you would say it. This is how maybe I would say it how you would say it, because it comes across. If you don't mean what you're saying, it just doesn't fall flat. And especially on the opposite, when it does, when you can tell it, like that's where connections are made.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much, Emily. We're out of time. Ray, we didn't quite get to your question, but perhaps you want to ask it on social media, and then Emily will very thoughtfully answer using some tips and tricks that she just taught us about today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.